You know, it's curious. As a cultural conservative, sometimes it's not the theist, well, the Christian theist, that upsets me. It's the atheist. Because as a cultural conservative, I'm for small government. And that means in issues involving society, I'm for a deregulated free market of thought. In other words, I don't really want nanny state laws. But that often makes me in a position to have to make a difficult choice. Because I don't like the statism of the right either, culturally, the religious right. Oh, and by the way, the reason I use culture and I'm going to say society is because social conservatives are ones that feel that law should represent culture. Social progressives are ones that feel law should represent culture or regulations. Now, a cultural conservative, and I'm really not sure what kind of social progressive would be ones that don't believe in regulation, or actually what I've always said, social deregulation, minimal government, by the way, as much as possible, was still ensuring some uh, positive rights to have social justice, but as minimal as possible. For me, that's my view. So, I'm actually wondering, what can we do to actually go ahead and have this kind of system? Because I'm divided on this issue. When you have social progressives and religious right, keep in mind, I'm not talking about economics now, or social issues that are basically economic, culture issues. But I'm talking about straight culture, not to do with health, wealth, or age. The things in the capitalist system that have a caseless class system involved with them, primarily to do with economics and status. I kind of pigeonhole those two things together. And that is that I want to know what we could do to change those things. But that's what I want. So, I have to ask myself, when I hear about theists, Christians, being criticized by atheists, like they don't like Christmas, or no, theists saying we don't like Christmas, we don't like God on our money, I'm often divided because, on the one hand, like I said, I like the cultural tradition, but I don't like it involved in law. So I wouldn't want things like English only first, actually prohibition against gay marriage, because even though culturally I'm conservative, I wouldn't want it regulated. It's just I want a deregulated culture, see. But yeah, you get the deists, and they're statists too. They're ones that want social conservatism. Because they want social regulated instead of cultural deregulated. And it's like, well, because I'm an atheist that simply believes that there can be no real methodology to any agency that subscribes to the supernatural. In other words, there's nothing but the natural world. And even though you can't prove it, like, for example, on things that are unprovable or unknowable, like what was before time, what's outside the universe, even what's beyond the light barrier, for stars that have expanded so far that we'll never be able to see them again. Who knows what's beyond that point of light that light can't reach past us or back to us because the universe is expanding? Who knows? Except for everything in the universe that seems consistent with the laws of physics and nature. And really, that pretty much says it right there that, there's no, like, the movie The Black Hole, Disney movie, there's no devil in the friggin' black hole. There's just energy and mass and radiation and singularity. I mean, who knows what happens before time, but it seems very unlikely that it would have an agency that had any kind of coherent thought, because that's an abstract. And that doesn't make sense. So it's like, how could anything really be God, or magic, or Wicca, or Tao, or the Force, or power like Carlos Castaneda, or voodoo, or anything? Now, there's a saying that goes, well, you can certainly not believe in ghosts, but that doesn't mean you might not be frightened of them. I could tell my mind over and over again it's not real, but if the mind wants to believe it's real, well, that's a battle of rationale versus your subconscious, and you don't always win that. It's true. It doesn't mean you buy into what you're perceiving. It just means that you can't resist it under certain circumstances. So that's fine. So frankly, I'm an atheist. But that doesn't preclude me from being a cultural conservative who paradoxically finds value in the very thing that he doesn't find any agency in, or belief in any agency from anything beyond the natural world. And that's a rational choice. So, if you want to say, oh, that's a 911 theist, if I saw friggin' burning rubble flying at me, or a volcano, or 10 guys with machetes, who knows, But I can be sure that if I was sitting in a room having a conversation with somebody, that isn't what I would be saying. Not because I believe it's any more true, it's just, and it's a paradox. It's a contradiction, a confliction, a juxtaposition. And I'm not really ashamed of that. Matter of fact, I get hunches and feelings and sentimental feelings all the time. I like Christmas. I don't like money with God's name on it, but I don't really find it that offensive. Matter of fact, I don't find anything that's traditionally Eurocentric offensive at all. Although it is ironic, as a conservative, many people find offensive Europeans who they denote as their true heritage. That's always kind of interesting. But no, I think reality is that the world is just the world. And that's all it is. Without the supernatural. So in that sense, it's like there is no choice. But that's as far as it goes with me. Other than that, I think in the inner world that has no supernatural agency, but just is an expression of our inner dialogue, although this is subject to science and psychology and neurology, and as best we can understand it, you know, what it is to make up our inner selves, at least from a perspective or perception aspect of it, these things have a truth all their own. That's not hedging the bet. I just think it's something we can perceive without it having any agency in the real world. But that does leave you to wonder how much you perceive the real world correctly. Although certain things are inalienable, whether you perceive them correctly or not. You know, the physics and nature of reality. If you catch a cold, you catch a cold. If something happens to you, it happens to you. You know? So really, I haven't really got a problem with conservatism. Because as much as I would like to have a secular conservative basis for my political ideology, there isn't one yet. But I'm not sorry to say I'm making headway towards it. And if we want to criticize religion, why don't we start with things that are taboo a little bit? I think cultural conservatism could go a great distance forward for all of us, that if we gave a little ground for someone who wasn't European or can only have economic conservative aspects to have ground to stand upon, it would go a lot further taking care of our problems, a lot of our problems. There needs to be a fourth corner to stand upon, because you have social progressives, economic progressives, and you have social conservatives and economic conservatives, but you very rarely get national conservatives that have the ability to not be pigeonholed into certain fringe groups that we don't need. So, I think that's important because it adds another valuable perspective to things that should be considered. And yet, we can't have it turn into something that only proposes collectivism, because that will not do. And we have to be self-acknowledging when it runs into problems. Like, wait, I want to get this right. A exclusive instead of partly inclusive set of thoughts that always earmark it culturally or socially, either way, to ideas that could be further explored. Like ideas about immigration, things that are always being called bigoted or racist. I don't propose any of those, but I do propose that they be explored more honestly with a greater latitude of varied perspective than the ones that commonly use these for wedge issues, for fringe ideas that I don't accept. Because even ideology has its own aspects of unlogical thought, and that just doesn't work. So, in closing, I think that saying, oh, the religious right is bigoted because they believe in something that 50 years ago was actually moral scruples and ethics, the basis of reality, I mean, not reality, morality, some people's reality, but definitely a subjective one, is not doing anyone any service. Them or us. And that's why I'm a conservative atheist. Because it may be paradoxical, but in between the divisions, I think on different points that are not a juxtaposition of each other, there's greater truths that lie there. And we could do it without having to necessarily be centralists in our perspective, judgment, and opinion.